let's jump into it. And let me introduce Pamela Wilson here, our guest. So thank you all for joining us. And Pamela, thank you for jumping in here to speak with our audience here today. So Pamela coaches people in mid-career how to build profitable online businesses from her office in Nashville, Tennessee. And she's owned and operated her own business for over 30 years now and is an online educator, 3-time author, keynote speaker, and the founder of PamelaWilson.com. So over there on her site, you'll find her signature program, the Offer Accelerator, which helps people design, deliver, and optimize high-value offers. So I'll leave it at that and let Pamela go ahead and take things away. And she's going to tell us how we can design and test out offers today. So away we go. Pamela, thanks so much.
Thank you. I am so excited to be here. And thank you to everybody who's logging in and saying hello. It's always great to see everyone. And I see we have someone from the coolest place on the planet, Michael from Donegal, Ireland. So it's always good to have someone from the coolest place on the planet in your presentation. So thank you for being here. As you mentioned, this is my 30th year in business, and it's my 10th year as a business coach. And one of the reasons that I wanted to talk about this topic is one of the most disheartening things that can happen to you as a business coach is to be coaching someone who is super smart and super accomplished, and they want to put together an offer. In this case, we're talking about service offers, but it could be any kind of offer. And they are so smart that they're 100% sure that they know exactly what to put in their offer. And they put it out there and it doesn't work. So I want to talk to you about a way that you can ensure that your offer will be successful and some things that you can do in advance to I'd love to say you can guarantee success, but I'm not going to say that. But it's going to increase your chances of having a really successful new service on the marketplace, which is what we're going to talk about today. So I'm going to go over to my slides. Let's see if we can make this happen, and we'll dig in and start getting into all the details.
All right, and I'm going to turn my camera off here. Pamela is too, and we're going to make these full screen. And please do feel free to throw your questions into the chat as they come up. We'll try to address them just, as they come up. So, and yeah, let's keep this lively and keep it a conversation and a dynamic. So
exactly. Yeah, I actually explained to Eric before we started that I actually enjoy being interrupted. So please interrupt me with any questions in chat. I really do want this to be as interactive as it can be. And we're not a huge group here today. So if you are here live, you have a chance to get your question answered. It will not get lost. So that's the good news. So we're going to talk about the smart way to develop a new service and to get paid by your customers who are going to give you feedback that will make your offer better. What's really tough about putting an offer out online is that we're doing it in this environment where it is so easy to compare what we are doing with what our competitors are doing. We see our competitors who have these really well-developed offers. They're all shiny and they're beautifully branded and they have dozens of testimonials to back them up. And when you see that online, it can make you feel like, oh, I'm not going to create something new. Look at this marketplace. There's so much out there already. I'm just going to throw in the towel before I even get started. And I understand that feeling. I've felt it myself. But what I want to show you today is a way that you can compete with those existing offers and win. And it's really this concept of you can get paid to develop your new service. That is the big thing that I want you to remember from this presentation. My goal is to help two kinds of people. So people who are just starting out, maybe you haven't created a service offer yet, maybe you're starting out in your business. If that's you, you are in luck because I'm going to show you a process that will help you to develop a successful offer relatively quickly. And if you're here watching this and you already have a business, you already have some successful offers out there, And maybe you're considering like adding a line of business or creating a new service offer. If that's you, then you're going to get a system that will help you to go from the idea that's in your head right now to selling that idea in less than 30 days. So no matter where you are, no matter where you're starting, if you want to build a new service offer, I want to welcome you to this presentation, the no sweat method to develop a new profitable service. So as Erik mentioned, my name is Pamela Wilson. My website link is right below, and I do have a baby YouTube channel, let's call it. It's just growing, but you can find me on YouTube at Pamela Wilson Coach. And I started my business in 1992. So like Erik said, I've been in business for myself for 30 years, and I've had an online business since 2010. And I'm sort of known as an author, I'm a keynote speaker, and I'm the former executive vice president of educational content for Copyblogger. And those are the books I'm most known for. And also, like Erik said, and I don't want to go over this all over again, but the big thing that I do is I coach people who are in mid-career to build profitable online businesses. And like I mentioned before, I really want to show you how to get paid to develop this new service. You don't need to guess about what people will want and what they'll want to pay for. There's a way you can do this that you can actually get paid to figure all of that out. So I had a service-based business. It was a design and marketing agency. And in the early days of my business, I delivered these services to my clients day in and day out. And after a couple of decades of that, I got to the point that I really wanted to move into the online space. And I decided, like a lot of us do, that I wanted to develop an online course. Maybe some of you have been in that situation that you think, I'm going to make a course and use a course as passive income, which those of us who've done this know that that's the point where you start rolling on the floor laughing, because there's nothing passive about any of this. But anyway, so I went through all the steps of developing the online course. I got the website. I got the LMS, learning management system software. I created all the lessons. I built all these worksheets, and I filmed the videos, which, let me tell you, filming videos in 2010 was not the easiest thing. So I created this whole thing, and then I put the course in front of my audience. And, it would make a really good story if I could say, and then no one bought my course, because that would be a really great rags to riches story. But that's not what happened. Actually, some people did buy it. I'm a pretty good marketer, so some people bought my course. But what happened is, after I delivered this course that I had sort of developed in a vacuum, I was left with this feeling of, was that really what they needed? Did I actually build what they needed? And it wasn't a good feeling. It wasn't a good feeling to feel like I sold people something, and I don't know for sure that that was actually what they needed, right? So I learned, and the thing that I learned about that was very helpful to me was this concept of an MVP, which is a minimum viable product or service. So I'd love to check in for people who are here live. And Erik, if you want to check in on this as well. Are you familiar with this concept of an MVP, a minimum viable product?
I am, because here at Pathfinder, we've definitely been in the minimum viable product stage before. And we have absolutely had to live and work through that. So we're definitely familiar. And
Oh, good.
as a
Yeah.
coach, I know that a lot of our subscribers at Pathfinder also are familiar with this too. So
Oh, good. Yes. And I see Maureen said she's familiar and she loves it. Yeah, this really, it helped me so much, because I realized, there's a way to do this where I don't have to just guess at what people want, and I don't have to pour months and I see sometimes people have poured years into developing something without ever checking in with their audience to see if it's what they need. So I learned about this process, but everything I saw about it was missing like a lot of details. It still sounded like a lot of guesswork, and I couldn't quite figure out how to make it work. So I created my own method. I created a method for testing an offer, developing it and testing it in an environment where you can really get feedback. And that's what I teach now, and it works really well. It gives clients a lot of confidence when they have developed an offer, kind of co-created it with their audience. And when you realize that, when you realize, you know what, you don't need to guess, you can get paid to develop your new service, everything changes. It's so much easier. So let's dig into these steps so you can see how I teach it, so that you can turn around and apply this to any offer idea you have in mind right now. And the first step is market exploration. And this is a very deliberate choice of words. What we're really doing here is some very basic market research, but people get so intimidated by this idea of market research. It sounds like, you need a room with a one-way mirror and people in lab coats, and you need to gather this huge focus group, and it doesn't need to be that complex. And, sometimes what stops you from developing your new service in the first place is you just feel like you don't know exactly what your customers need. And so this step is to help you get past that, because no one wants to guess, and you shouldn't be in a position where you have to guess. And that's what happened to me when I created that course I referred to earlier. I think what happens is once you're kind of an expert on something, it becomes very difficult to know what the non-experts need. And the idea of this stage of market exploration is that you are going to figure out how people are talking about their needs, so that you can talk about your solution in a way that they will understand it. And I have 3 very simple ways that you can discover this information, and they are all free. They just take a little bit of time, and I want to show you how they work so you can get started using these techniques. So the first thing to think about is to think about books that may have been written to solve the challenge that you want to solve with your new service. So put yourself in the shoes of the people you want to serve, and think about them going to a site like Amazon and looking for a book to buy to solve their problem. So go into Amazon, look for the best-selling books on the topic that you want to help people with. And I want you to look at the good reviews. Look at those 4 and 5-star reviews. What did people really like about those best-selling books? What did they find really helpful? And then I want you to do something else, which can also be super fun. And it's to look at the bad reviews as well. Now, some of the bad reviews, and as someone who's gotten bad reviews, these are some of mine right on screen. Some of the bad reviews aren't that useful. Like it's kind of small, but the slide here, the first review says, "I found it too obvious," somebody said about one of my books. So, that's not that helpful. But some of the bad reviews will go into detail about how the book did not solve their challenge, what they were looking for, what they bought the book for, and how that desire was not fulfilled by the solution as presented in the book. And what I want you to do is to capture that information. And literally, you can copy paste it from Amazon. And why do you want to do this? Well, because this is the voice of your future customer speaking about their challenges. And it's really valuable to you to see what words are they using? How are they expressing their frustration? So capture that, and then also let it spur ideas in your mind. Like if you see a lot of people complaining about the same basic thing, think to yourself, well, how can I do this better? How can I make sure that my service meets that need? So that's the first tip for market exploration. And then the next idea is to explore social groups. So what do I mean by social groups? And I'm not going to tell you, join a bunch of Facebook groups, although you could do that. But social groups are really any place online where people are gathering and talking about the challenge that your new service is going to solve. So there are lots of places to find these groups. LinkedIn groups, if you serve people who are kind of in the corporate or small business environment, you might want to start by looking on LinkedIn. If you're serving individuals like business to customer, Facebook groups might be a good place to look. You can also follow hashtags on social media. So, for example, LinkedIn and Facebook both, not Facebook as much, but LinkedIn uses hashtags. Instagram is a great place to follow hashtags. Follow hashtags that talk about the challenge you want to solve. Or you could even go to YouTube and look for YouTube videos about the challenge you want to help people with, and just look at the comments on those videos, because what you'll find in those comments is people who are really just talking off the cuff about how they experience the challenge that you want to solve. So I want you to also capture that information. Anywhere you see people talking about the challenge you want to help them with, capture how they talk about it. And I'm going to show you where to put all that captured text in just a moment. Have you ever done this kind of thing, Erik?
Hey, yes, definitely. And so I have a question for you on this one, actually, when it comes to the groups. It's, do we have to be active participants in the groups, or can we take more of the voyeur approach and just kind of see what's going on? Have you experienced both sides of that coin, if you will? And do you feel like one might be more valuable than the other?
I am all for lurking when it comes to this, honestly, because here's the thing, this stage of doing this market exploration, and one of the things I'm going to talk about in a minute is how it's a really great habit to do this maybe twice a year, like every 6 months or so. Just go through this process of, researching your market and looking into how people are talking about their challenge, and seeing, what people are commenting on books or on YouTube videos, whatever it is. And so you could really join a group and get this information and leave the group if you wanted. I don't think you have to actively participate unless you want to. But the idea here is not, oftentimes people will say, oh, join the group so that you can contribute to the group and be seen as an expert. That is a whole different thing. All we're doing now is trying to capture how our customers are talking about their frustrations. Does that make sense?
That makes total sense. Yeah, I think those are definitely two different strategies for using these groups. So for the fact finding, I think that makes perfect sense to
Right.
take the spying approach, or the lurker or voyeur.
Right. And it's funny, Jeanette saying, I prefer to spy. So that, yes, absolutely. And in this case, I fully encourage you to spy. Just see if you can figure out how your customer is talking about their challenges. All right, let's look at the third thing that you can do when you're in this market exploration mode to try to figure out how people are talking about their challenge. And as people who are very familiar and in the world of SEO, I think you're going to like this one. This is really about you putting yourself in your customer's shoes and searching like you're the customer. And the idea in this step is to try to get branding and pricing insights about what is already in the market right now. So this is an interesting stage, because sometimes what happens is that you go out there and you see all of these, let's say, service offers that have been created, and you can start to feel a little disheartened or intimidated because you see that a lot of people already have solved this problem. And I want to ask you to try your best to not feel that way, and instead just get really curious about the existing offers that are out there and take notes. Take notes on what people call their offers, what's included in their offers, what kind of time frame they're using to deliver those offers, how they are pricing those offers. And this is such an important step because your customer is going to be looking at your new service offer and comparing your service offer with all the others that are already in the marketplace, right? So you are basically getting to know your future competition, and you're getting to know a market that you are going to be joining with your new service offer. So it's a way for you to sort of see what's out there and start thinking about how you can differentiate what you want to offer from what is already in existence. Does that make sense, Erik?
Definitely. And I think, it's great to do all these things together at the same time, because I can see how one would inform the next, which would inform the next. Because we could see, like, yes, in these reviews, this is one theme that clearly stood out, but then we go over to a competitor's site and we see, hey, they're not addressing that at all. Maybe that's an opportunity. So
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. And I recommend that people take an afternoon to do this. It doesn't have to take a lot of time. And like you said, do it all at once if possible. I took a screenshot of these spreadsheets to show you the tool that I have in my program that helps people to do this work. It just gives them a place to drop both the text that they find online. So for example, somebody says something in a certain way in an Amazon review, you literally copy paste that into the spreadsheet just so you have that voice of the customer text in there to refer to. And then there's also a place for you to drop your ideas, because what tends to happen, all of us who are entrepreneurs, we start looking at this stuff. And like you just said, Erik, we immediately start thinking about ideas. Well, I could solve it this way. I could serve them this way. So having it in a spreadsheet can be really helpful.
I love the spreadsheet approach, because when doing this kind of qualitative research, if you're going one by one and not looking at it, all that information together as a whole, it can be hard to tease out some of those themes. But when you use a spreadsheet like this, you get to that kind of like 30,000 foot view of all that information, and you can really easily pull out those themes. So I love these.
Yeah, exactly. Pulling out themes is important, and they start to surface. It starts to become very obvious. And you may notice, for example, when you do the branding and pricing insights, which is where you're really looking at your competitors, you may notice, they're all saying this one thing, and I want to be different. So you can see it's very clear how you can stand out. In the handout that Erik put together, there's an article called 3 Simple Market Research Techniques to Help You Create an Irresistible Offer. And I highly recommend you take a look at that article. It goes into a little more detail about this whole step in the process. All right, so that was step 1, market exploration, we're calling it. And then the second step is to figure out how you can infuse your values into the offer you create. And the idea here is we want you to create a new service that is uniquely yours, that's not like anyone else's, so that you really become the only person in the marketplace who's offering this service in the way that you offer it. And the way you can do this is to really identify your own values. So I'll tell you a story, and Erik, I don't think you know this, but when I had my service-based business, my design studio, marketing agency, I designed a lot of publications. So one of my biggest clients was actually a whiskey magazine called Malt. It was called Malt Advocate at the time. It's been purchased and is now known as Whiskey Advocate, but it was the only American-based whiskey magazine. I knew nothing about whiskey, by the way. I learned a lot by designing it. But one of the reasons I got that huge client is that they were a small husband and wife business, and they were looking at agencies that could take over their marketing work and help them put together their magazine. And they really wanted to work with a smaller company. And one of the things that I did when I promoted my service is I used to call myself the unagency, because when people would hire me, I didn't have an account executive or a project manager or all these layers of people between me and the client. When a client hired me, I dealt directly with the client, and they knew that they were going to be talking to me, who was the person behind the strategy and the person who was really overseeing all the implementation. So this particular business valued that. And because I expressed that value, they chose me to be their agency. And they were, for me, they were a huge client at the time. So I was really glad that I had kind of made that part of my values, because it attracted the exact kind of person I wanted to work with. So when you can do that, when you promote yourself with these values that you've identified, it can help you to attract those right people. So what I'm going to do for this part of the process is I'm going to bring up a slide, and on this next slide, there's a whole bunch of words. So if you're watching the replay or you're here watching live, you might want to get ready to take a screenshot, because this list will help you to just start thinking about all the values that you want to make sure you express in your offer. All right, everybody ready? Here we go. Oh, what's important to you? Sorry, that was a lot of buildup for the wrong slide. So what's important to your business? This is why we do the values exercise, because you want to get in touch with what's important to your business. All right, here's the values slide. It's this one. So define your values. And again, I highly recommend that you take a screenshot of this, because there are words that will get your brain in gear. They'll help you to start thinking about the kinds of values that you want to infuse into your offer. Like Erik said at the beginning, I coach people who are in mid-career. And, you know, by mid-career, we have opinions and we've lived some life, and certain things are important to us, right? Maybe we started out in our careers feeling kind of neutral and, you know, maybe sort of generic, but by the time you hit mid-career, you have certain things that you want represented in what you do with your offers. So it is really important to get in touch with your values. Let this list just be a starting point, and see if you can identify, let's say, 3 things that you want to make sure are apparent in the offer that you create, because that is going to help you stand out in the marketplace. Does that make sense, Erik?
That definitely makes sense. And to kind of tie it back to Pathfinder and how we do what we do here, looking at all these different values here, the one that kind of jumps out at me is service. And when we were creating Pathfinder, we were trying to figure out how can we differentiate our offering from all these other amazing SEO tools out there. And that's really the one that kind of stood out for us. And it's like, how can we help guide people through their SEO journey and be of service to them rather than just offering them a product? And so that's kind of how we came up with our approach of guided SEO versus just being another SEO tool. So I love this.
Yeah, and I have to agree. I mean, it's one of the reasons I work with Pathfinder. I don't know if we mentioned at the top of this that I'm a client, but that's one of the reasons I work with Pathfinder, is that it really, you know, your site and the way you present your offer really stood out to me. So I think you're doing a beautiful job expressing that value. And I would just, anyone watching, I would recommend that you do this thinking. And, you know, it's the kind of thing you can go on a walk or go for a drive, or, you know, just let your mind relax and think about all of the values that you want to make sure in the offer you create. All right, now we get to the fun part. Now we want to take this offer that you're thinking about and figure out how you can position it and get paid. So I'm reading Jeanette's comment, and Jeanette is saying that I like this because I've had leads who are really unhappy with their agency. So it's good to think about what's important, like honesty and things like that. Yes, absolutely. I think that the values thinking can really help to inform how you put your offer out into the world, how you talk about it, and then how you structure it and how you position it, which is what we'll talk about here. So what I want to share in this part is a way that you can make your new service sound really logical and valuable and appealing. Because I find, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Erik, but when it comes to services in particular, like versus products, right? There's this weird, like intangible quality that can make services kind of hard to sell. I think when you're selling a product, like a tangible product, you can describe it physically, you can show it in a photo, you can sort of engage all the senses when you talk about it. But it's not that way when you sell a service. There's not something tangible that you can describe. It just makes it challenging, you know? And so I think that the best thing that you can do is to describe how your service is going to be delivered. Because when you describe the process, that builds confidence. It helps people to feel like, okay, there's a plan I can follow. And going back to Pathfinder, I mean, Pathfinder has a very defined plan, and that builds a lot of confidence. It's like, okay, I'm going to follow this plan step by step. I know what to do first. I know what to do next. This is called a framework, and developing some kind of framework to describe how you deliver your offer can, like I said, build a lot of confidence, a lot of trust. And it doesn't have to be super complex. This does not have to be this, weeks long process. It really is about describing how you deliver the offer step by step using the fewest number of words possible. That is the challenge. And what I want to ask you to do is to convert the language to second person. So I want you to try to use you as much as possible so that the person reading your framework can kind of put themselves in that place. They know that you're talking about them. So let's say, as an example, let's say that you have an SEO agency and you decide you're going to add this line of business, and it's going to be content marketing services, right? So here's how we could talk about that. Let's say that you have this content marketing service and you want to develop some kind of framework to describe how you're going to deliver this new service. It's very simple. You're going to tell people step one is that you send in the in-depth content marketing assessment form. So we're going to assume that you're going to develop this form, kind of like an intake form, but we'll call it an in-depth content marketing assessment form, right? And you describe how they're going to send that form in. And then step two, you receive a plan for content topics and publication frequencies. So you, the person watching this presentation, take their assessment form information and you develop a plan. And the way you describe it is you say, you receive a plan for your content topics and your content publication frequency. Then 2 more steps, super simple. Step 3 is you review and you publish your content. So in this case, let's say as your content marketing service, you're handing over Google Docs that have the content in it, and the person just has to take it and copy paste it into their website. Let's say they're using WordPress, but whatever they're using, they copy paste the content that you create into their website. That's step 3. And step 4, you receive a content performance report every quarter. Any client seeing this knows exactly what they're getting with this content marketing service. They can see that there's a beginning, a middle, and an end, and they can see that the work they put in is going to generate results. So this is the kind of thing that builds so much confidence when you can very concisely explain exactly how you deliver your service. It just builds so much confidence and so much trust in your offer. Do you have any thoughts on this one, Erik?
I think that's a super important point, especially when it comes to something like content marketing or SEO or something, these different marketing strategies that we'll use that your, run-of-the-mill business owner may not, they've heard of it, they've heard that they probably need it, but at the end of the day, a lot of times they really don't know what it entails, especially with something like SEO and all the algorithms. And people have heard there's like white hat SEO and black hat SEO. So I think we can build so much trust with potential clients when we spell it out for them in terms they understand and make it about them and what we're going to deliver to them versus being about us and what we do and what our company is all about. So I think this is a really important piece. And when we're talking about building SEO service pages, that's one key element that we always recommend people have in there, step by step. What is your process? So I think this is spot on.
I'm so glad to hear you say that. And yeah, we all know that feeling of talking to a client who clearly has done some research and they know some of the jargon, but you can tell they don't actually know what those things mean, right? So like you said, making this very simple and using their own words and showing them the results they're going to get, it just helps them feel better about engaging with you and like they're going to understand what they need to do on their side and the kinds of results they'll get as a result. So, or as a result of working with your service. So, all right, so we've talked about the market research, which we've renamed market exploration because it's kind of fun, I think. We talked about how you can tap into your values and infuse your offer with your values. And then in this section, we talked about how you can develop a framework for how you're going to deliver your service that builds confidence and builds trust. So we're kind of at that magic moment where we start thinking about how are you going to price this minimum viable service? And so what I want to talk to you about in these last few slides is how you can price and how you can really start thinking about premium pricing. And this is the part where you get paid to develop your new service. So what I want you to do is you've got this idea for your service, you've done all this work, the market research, you know what you're going to put out there, you know how you're going to structure it. What I want you to think about is what will the regular price for your service be? So let's say this content marketing service that we've given as an example, you're going to charge a retainer of $4,000 a month. $4,000 a month for a content marketing service where you're delivering X number of pieces of content every month, and you take people through that framework that we just worked out. What I want to recommend is that when you offer it the first time, that you tell people this is a new service and my first 3 customers are going to get it at 50% off. Why do we do this? Why do we do this? We do this because we want to get those early customers in the door so that we can start getting feedback from them and figuring out how we can improve the service that we're delivering. We also want to get testimonials from those early customers. So we put it out there at this very attractive price, and we let people know the regular price is $4,000 a month, but the first 3 customers will get this for $2,000 a month. It's a really great way to make your minimum viable service extremely attractive to people who are early adopters. And what are you going to call those early adopters? Well, I love when you find some kind of aspirational name to give them. So you can call them founders or founding program members or pilot program members or charter customers. I have used this kind of language when I have developed minimum viable products in the past, and I've had people hitting my inbox saying, am I too late to be a pilot program member? I mean, people want to be among the group that is first to try your new service. So I think creating some kind of aspirational name and letting people know I'm inviting my founding members to join this new service at a really attractive price. The other thing you want to think about is letting people know that it's new, being very transparent about it, that you're going to be kind of co-creating this new service with them, and that you're going to be tailoring it to their needs, and let them know that you want feedback every step of the way. So you want to know what is confusing to people, what could help serve them better. You want to know everything that you can do to make this offer better for the people who take a chance on it the first time out of the gate. And your responsibility then as a business owner is to see what you can do to evolve this new service offer into something that is truly based on what your customers need and want. And when you do it in combination with all of the other things we talked about, understanding where you fit in the marketplace, understanding how you can make your values a part of your offer, and understanding how you can package this all up with an understandable framework that people just helps them to build confidence and they kind of get what you do. And then you build the offer based on feedback from actual clients. There is no stopping you. This is by far the best way to develop an offer and get paid to develop it, and to create something that truly meets people's needs and you don't have to guess about. So we're at the last slide, my friends. I'm sorry to say. This is where we ask for questions. And I would love to know, Erik, if anything came up for you when you were looking at those last slides.
Yeah, the feedback piece is so key. I think whether it's building a product or a service or whatever, especially at Pathfinder, I know the most valuable elements of what we offer our subscribers at Pathfinder are things that have come directly from them. So I just think feedback is so critical. And I think sometimes we run the risk of getting comfortable at a certain point in knowing what we're doing. And so we stop asking. And so I think it's really important to always have that kind of beginner's mindset where we're always trying to uncover what can we be doing better, how can we improve what we're doing, and offer more value ultimately to our clients.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I want to ask for those who are here live, if you have any questions. We fit a lot into about 40 minutes. So if you have any questions, drop them into chat. And Erik, should we put cameras back on?
Yeah, we can definitely put cameras back on.
All right, here we go.
All right. Let me take
mine says we have to disable spotlight. Here we go. Hello.
Right. We're back.
Hey, everybody. So yeah, Maureen is saying, I love simple. It is the hardest thing for those of us who know our field. And that is basically the curse of knowledge in a single sentence, right? We know our field, we know what we're doing, and it's really hard to simplify things. And that's where I think that customer exploration and just getting the voice of your customer can be so helpful, because you can see how they're talking about their problems, the words they're using, the exact way that they express those frustrations. It can be so useful to do that exploration and to continue to do it every 6 months or so. Just go back out there, see how people are talking about their problem now. We're talking in May 2022, so we're like 2 solid years into the pandemic. And I don't know if you feel this, but it's like the ground is continually shifting under our feet during this time. So doing this market exploration every 6 months, I think, is really a necessity, so you can keep in touch with where people's brains are right now.
So, Pamela, one question I have for you is, if you've just started offering a service, but it's still pretty loose, if you will, is this something you're already offering it? You can pretty much apply this, if it is something you're offering, but you don't really have it solidified. Can you help strengthen an offer by applying this in the early phases of a service offering?
I think you can. Honestly, it might be smart to almost go through this process. So do the market research, think about your values, and see if you can almost bring it back out with all of these this thinking applied to it. So it might mean that you rename it or you relaunch it under a new, banner and call it something slightly different, position it slightly differently. If it's working really well, you may not need to do this. But if you have started out and you're feeling like it hasn't quite hit what it could be and it hasn't become what it could be, then sort of relaunching it with this thinking in place, I think could make a big difference.
I like that idea of like the relaunch using this. If it's not really getting that kind of traction we might have hoped.
Yeah.
So
Jeanette is saying a good point how we can forget to ask for feedback. And I find that particularly with clients we've had for a while, yes, it's always good to ask for feedback. And she's heading out. So yeah, do you have any other questions, Erik?
No, I think that pretty much does it on this end. Anything else you want to add?
I'd ask people to check out my website. There's lots there, all sorts of things you can click on and sign up for, and assessments you can take and fun stuff. And then my YouTube channel, we have new videos every Tuesday, and I'm doing YouTube lives now as well. So I'd love for people to join me over there. We have a lot of fun, and learning YouTube SEO has been quite the adventure. So.
Indeed. And I can definitely vouch for Pamela. I get to work with a ton of people, as you know, as a SEO coach here at Pathfinder. And Pamela's site and her YouTube channel are extremely useful wealth of information on all things marketing and running an online business. So definitely highly recommend going and checking those out. There is absolutely something that will pertain to you and where you're at with your business.
Thank you so much, Erik. That's really great. And Emma's saying hello, and she's it's helped her think about market exploration from a different perspective, and she's thanking us. So yeah. Ariana's thanking us and thanking us for the handout. And Michael from the most awesome place in the world is also thanking us. So that's good. I think that's pretty good. So.
And you can grab that handout next to chat under handouts. You can download that before we end today, and some very useful links in there.
Nice. Marcin is also saying hello. Yeah, thank you to everybody who's been here live. Been a great group. I really appreciate it. And if you're watching the replay, you made it to the end. So congratulations. And thanks for this opportunity, Erik. I really enjoyed it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for joining us, Pamela. All right. Well, I hope you all have a great day. And Pamela, I look forward to continuing to work with you. And yeah, thank you for showing us how to do this. So, all right. Thank you, everybody.
Take care, everybody.
Yeah, be well. We'll see ya.